Oh, oh, sorry. Please shut that off.
What do you mean there's not too many
Oh,
people?
I just thought that there'd be more people. More. Sorry, I didn't know my sound was on. Take that off.
Yeah. So these, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't really think that that it's too few of people. All right, perfect. I think that it's a good number of people. Sometimes when the classes get too big, it gets a little bit more chaotic. So, yeah. And some people, they watch the replay rather than, attending it. So, yeah. So we are grateful for whoever showed up today. Thank you so much, so much, so much. My name is Dr. Erica Steele. If you're not familiar with me, I am a board certified naturopathic doctor. I hold 6 degrees in my field. They're all in the natural healthcare space. And I teach people how to live a life naturally. So I'm in the beautiful St. Lucia. I live here. And so I am just so grateful and blessed to be here with you guys. Having left the stress of the States and deciding to choose myself. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. And we're going to talk all about fruits and veggies and incorporating these into our diet. So first off, I'm going to say that if you've never taken a class with me before, I'm very informal in the sense that if you have a question, just pop it in the chat and I'll incorporate it in. So don't feel like, oh, you've got to hold your questions or whatever. Just pop it in the chat and I'll incorporate it in. As I was mentioning before, I will send out a replay of this particular class afterwards. And this is not necessarily like a lecture series. It's more of an informal conversation. So I do different types of educations and things like that. And so this is more of kind of just a chat with Doc. So, all right, groovy. So, nutrition is really the foundation of your health. Okay. And I know we say that, but really understanding that you cannot create health unless you have good nutrition. And when I say good nutrition, I'm not talking about perfection. I'm talking about 80% healthy, right? So if you can get 80% of your diet healthy and balanced, right, you're doing pretty good. When we're talking about that 80%, right, we're talking about, your macronutrients of your carbohydrates, your proteins, as well as your fats. That's what we are really, talking about. And so when we're looking at your fruits and vegetables, they are an aspect of your carbohydrates. Now, there's 2 types of carbohydrates. You have your complex and you have your simple. Your fruits and vegetables are going to be classified as your complex carbohydrates. Again, your fruits and your vegetables. So the diet world has kind of taught us or trained us, if you will, no carb, low carb, carbs are bad, etc. When in actuality, most of your diet needs to come from carbohydrates. However, we want them from complex carbohydrates, i.e. your fruits and your vegetables. Why? Because that gives you your short-term energy burst, right? So just kind of as a side note, we get our long-term energy from our fats, right? So that would be our healthy fats like our avocado, our nuts, our seeds, etc., right? And then we repair and heal based off of our proteins, right? So if you're protein deficient and you're eating too high fat of a diet, your body's going to be off balance. And then your carbs are over everywhere and you're eating more simple carbohydrates, which are your breads, your pastas, that sort of thing. So understanding that we're going to be focused on your carbohydrates, which are, just as a repeat, are broken down into 2, simple and complex. Your fruits and your vegetables are going to be classified under your complex carbohydrates. Again, your simple is what you want to reduce and what you want to minimize, which is your bread, your pasta, your rice, your things like that. So those spike the glucose. So your complex carbohydrates do not spike your glucose. They actually keep your glucose pretty stable, and we get energy sources from it. Okay, everybody with me? So far. All right, groovy. Okay, so now that we're understanding that piece of it, we also want to understand that complex carbohydrates, they serve a lot of different roles for us. They have a lot of vitamins in them. They have a lot of minerals in them. They have a lot of fiber in them. They also have a lot of antioxidants in them, right? They actually help us to detoxify mildly, especially like your green ones. So, think about green. Green has chlorophyll in it, right? From the sun that converts to the plants. And so that helps us to naturally detoxify. So what do I mean? Dr. Still, what are you talking about green? So I'm talking about kales, I'm talking about broccolis, I'm talking about spinaches, things like that, things that are green, right? When we're looking at our fruits and our vegetables, the color has like a real difference, right? So like your reds are going to be more of your lycopene and things like that are going to help like in your tomatoes and whatnot, right? Even when we're talking about peppers, right? Interesting enough about peppers, the green ones are actually the not ripe ones. They just pull them early, and then they turn into the yellow ones, and then eventually the red ones. The red ones actually have the most nutrition. So understanding all of the fruits and all of the vegetables and what they actually do can be extremely helpful when we're working on building a healthy diet. Berries and things like that are amazing for your antioxidant as well, to help with, again, detoxification and supporting your liver. All right. So a lot of times people are eating very high processed food diets, right? So they're eating things in boxes, they're eating things in bags, and they're eating things that are enriched, right? So what that means is that they're taking, let's say, a natural occurring substance, and they're extracting the nutrients out of them, and then they're putting the nutrients back in it. And that's a process called enriching, right? Well, enriching is still a chemical process, and the body has a time really identifying what those nutrients are. It still kind of passes as food, but in all actuality, it's not naturally grown, or it's not, naturally occurring. So, people don't process it. The body doesn't process it as efficiently. Some of the other issue lie in that a lot of the food, the way that it's grown, especially in the States, is GMO. So it's made from a seed that's wrapped in a chemical, right? And so then it grows, and then it can be sprayed with herbicides and pesticides. So the food itself is not truly organic or natural, right? We'll talk about organic in a minute, but it's not truly natural. It's an unnatural substance, and then being sprayed with herbicides and pesticides. So a lot of times people will have food reactions, but it's not actually the food they're reacting to. It's all the chemicals that the person is reacting to. That's why food allergy testing is wildly inaccurate. A lot of times I have found, and I've done tons of food allergy testing over my career, a lot of times they give false negatives and false positives. And even some of the more advanced food reaction testing, we have to go through lots of layers of cleaning up the GI tract before we can even test. And most of the time, when I get to that point and I test, the patient is not reacting to the food. It's the glyphosates, it's some of the herbicides, it's some of the pesticides, it's some of the chemicals in the food. So just to be aware of that. My recommendation would be not to waste your money on food allergy and food sensitivity testing, just because it's not as accurate. And I'll teach you how to test yourself for food reactions towards the end. All right. So where are we at? Okay, so eating a diverse palette of your fruits and your vegetables can really help with your fiber, your vitamins, your minerals, etc. Right? And it's really a good filler for your diet, right? So let's kind of build a plate, shall we? So when we're building a plate, we want our protein, right? So let's say that you're eating, that you choose to eat animal-based proteins. We look at your lean proteins, right? So we look at like chicken breast, turkey breast, white fish. Why do we look at those? Because they're lean sources. I'm not saying you can never eat beef or lamb or things like that, but those are higher fat. The ratios are not as good. So those are higher fat, lower protein as compared to your lean sources, right? Now, if you decide that you're going to eat those higher fat sources, you definitely need to make sure that you have a lot of fruits and vegetables, because the fiber in those will allow it to move through the system. So i.e., right, you take, like, let's say you have a couple bites of your protein, then you have a couple bites of your fruits and veggie, couple bites of your protein, couple bites of your veggie. And then I will also organize it too, that you actually compare it with your veggie, not your fruit. Fruit is a slow digester, so you don't want to have the fruit with your protein sources. Fruits are separate. They're best to be eaten actually by themselves. That's the better option for the fruit. I don't want to bother. All right, cool. Got it. Yeah, that's definitely a better option for your fruit, is to eat that together. That's what fruits are really good for, just snacks, right? Throughout the day, like you can do, and you can do fruit with, let's say, like a fat and a protein, like a peanut butter or something like that. But understand that it's going to be a slow digester. So you definitely want to eat it by yourself. I wouldn't have it with your kind of animal-based protein, because it will slow that digestion down. And the animal-based protein, because it's lacking in fiber, has a hard time digesting within the system. Okay, back to our plate. So we have our plate, we have our 4 ounces of lean protein source. Now, let's say you choose not to eat animal-based proteins. Then you're going to be really looking at your lentils, or you're going to be looking at your beans. So your black beans and your kidney beans are going to be your lower fat bean source. And why, again, we emphasize this low fat, because most people, I mean, I've treated over 40,000 patients since 2009, and most people eat low protein, high fat, mid-range carb diets. And so what happens with that? It slows the gallbladder down, it slows the liver down, it slows metabolic processes down. And so, and in order for you to really test this theory, you have to track your food. And I know people do cringe, they don't like tracking their food, but that's the only way to really confirm where your ratios are in terms of your fats and your proteins and your carbohydrates, because getting it in balance is really important, especially if you're going to be healing yourself with food and or adding supplementation kind of further down the line. Okay, so you've got your lean protein sources, and then you've got your veggies, and you're kind of swapping them back and forth because you're trying to move the fiber through your system. So you're taking a couple of bites of your protein, couple bites of your vegetables, and that's to be able to move things out. Your fats are very sparingly. So those are going to be like your oils, or like I said, nuts are pretty high in fat. So we don't, and they don't digest well. Some people would say they're not originally part of our diets. So, they don't digest well. So you have to soak them overnight and then dehydrate them so that the enzymes in them kind of start to break down, so you can actually break them down. Beans are best if you sprout them, and they make more of kind of a living source, and you get them, whole, and then you soak them and sprout them and all the things, right? And so that's a whole nother kind of topic we can discuss, but just understanding the different chemical reactions that happen with your food, and also food pairing, and what things we pair food with, right? So understanding, like I said, we don't pair our fruits with other things because it's a slow digester. Vegetables will pair with everything, which is why I said that it's a filler. So if you're hungry, you can always go to your veggies. Your veggies can always be your source of snacking or source of anything. Now, vegetables also can help you to determine what food, what how do I say this? What connections you have to your food, meaning that juicing, as a for instance, right? Juicing just your vegetables, which juicing is just a process of extracting all of the nutrients and fiber away from your veggies, right? So juicing actually gives you high potent nutrients, right? What I mean by that is that it gives you just all that nutrition from the vegetables that you're consuming, okay? If you're consistent with the juicing, and I'm not saying you have to be, but it's interesting, once you start getting consistent with the juicing, you begin to realize, wow, I'm really getting a lot more nutrients. Your energy levels start to go up. You start to feel a lot better, right? But then you still have certain cravings towards food. Why is that? Because there is sometimes an emotional connection to the food, but sometimes there's a chemical addiction that we have to certain foods as well. So recognizing that juicing is a great way to kind of get like your pulse rate on where you are with things. But again, I would do more vegetable juices than fruit juices. But again, your palate may not be ready for that kind of thing. And so you may have to start off with your fruit juices to begin with. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. All right. So, all right. Most, if not all, diseases originate from nutrient deficiencies. So when we're looking at biochemistry, we're looking at what the person is eating, but more importantly, what they're digesting and assimilating. So that is going to generate energy within the body. So if a person has chronic disease, or a person does not feel well, or they have a lack of energy or whatever, the first thing that we look at is their diet. That's before I put a patient on supplements, before we start talking about detoxification, you have to look and balance your diet. If you do not balance your diet, you will always be dependent upon a supplement. You will always be dependent upon something external or someone external outside of yourself. Now, it's tricky because people have a lot of hangups when it comes to nutrition and it comes to diet. And especially people have a lot of hangups when it comes to eating of fruits and vegetables, because some of us were taught, not myself, but some of us were taught, I've seen this with patients, that, they couldn't get up from the table unless they ate all their fruits and vegetables, right? So what does that do as a child? That creates a negative association with fruits and vegetables, because it's like, oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to do anything if I don't eat all of these. So you know what? When I become an adult, right, as a for instance, I'll give you an example from a patient I treated years ago. I had a gal that came in, and she was in I think her early 20s, and she had diabetes, and she had high cholesterol, and she was a personal trainer. And I was like, that's interesting. Why would a personal trainer have all these metabolic conditions? Well, come to find out, she was a child of a farmer. And so, of course, as a growing farmer, we don't waste food around here. You have to sit at the table. And so she would have to sit at the table literally all night with her plate, and she just could not, finish her vegetables. So as an adult, after she left the house, she said, you know what? I'm not going to eat any more vegetables. I'm going to eat what I want to eat. Well, what does she want to eat? Fast food, because she never got to eat that kind of stuff growing up. So she was eating, hamburgers and French fries and all the things, right? And so what does that food have in it? Well, number one, I wouldn't necessarily call it food, but it has a lot of sodium in it. It has a lot of fat in it. It doesn't have a lot of nutrition in it. And there's, other than the little salads they have, which are mildly questionable, they don't really have, a lot of vegetables and things. So what happens? She starts to develop these metabolic health issues because of her diet. So we have a lot of negative association when it comes to our vegetables. That's why when we're working with children, it's so important to build positive association with our fruits and our vegetables, incorporating them into their food preparation, making little kind of, funny, the little, celery sticks with ants on a log kind of thing, and making these positive, healthy associations with our fruits and our vegetables so that they don't grow up thinking, oh my gosh, this was horrible. In my particular family system, I grew up as a vegetarian, so vegetables, and we were real vegetarians, not pizza and pasta vegetarians. So majority of our diet came from fruits and vegetables. And my dad always grew food. And so I learned where food came from. And, even to this day, my husband grows food and picks food and all kinds of stuff. And so having that foundation is so important. But let's say you didn't have that foundation. Let's say your family was more of an on the go TV dinner kind of family, right? You're having to clean and wash your palate. That's why I suggested juicing to start with, because juicing is the best way to clean your palate from high sugar, high fat, high sodium. And that's really what the palate has happened is high fat, high sugar, high sodium. And that's just the way that it goes, because that's how they sell food. They sell food with sugar, they sell food with sodium, they sell food with fat. The restaurants, as much as they are, helpful and all the things, right? They are in the business of selling food, right? And so they're not going to necessarily put a lot of attention to detail. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule, of course, but they're going to primarily be selling their food that way. And so your palate gets accustomed to that. Same thing with kind of the TV dinner sort of phenomena, or even, some of the processed food phenomena. Even though it's quick, and fast and cheap, that's really what you're putting in your body. And so there's a mindset that goes into eating and feeding yourself, right? So some of the mindset is, right, I wouldn't want to be fast and cheap, so I'm not going to put foods, because we are what we eat, right? And so if you want to be fast and cheap, then you're going to consume fast and cheap food, right? And so there's not necessarily shame attached to this. It's more of a different consciousness and a different awareness of thinking when you're looking at your food. Meaning, what organ am I going to feed with my food? We never say that. Instead, we say, what sounds good? What feels good? What do you feel like tonight? Right? Because there's a deep association with food and our emotions. So in order to shift your food, you have to shift your mind and you have to shift your emotions. Early on in my career, we're trained in school, healthy nutrition and putting patients on healthy diets, right? And so I came from California to Virginia, and I came out and I would put patients on these, healthy diets, right? And coming from California, where the culture and the society is very much, popular, it's everybody eats healthy because it's bathing suit season year round, right? And so coming to Virginia, it was a totally different transition because people were just not accustomed, and the access of healthy fruits and vegetables was really difficult. And so because of that, working with people, I really had to understand, wait a second, we have to really slow down and be a little more gentle and do this more as a process. And so that's what I recommend with you with this, is incorporating things slowly and incorporating things gently. Because if you try to go from one extreme to another, you're going to fail and it's not going to work and you're going to get frustrated. And that's not the grand scheme of things. You want to do things that are supporting you and that are encouraging. So you want to get those tiny successes as you go along, right? But in the beginning, it's all about mindset first. So making a conscious decision, okay, now I'm going to shift, right? Now I'm going to make a change, right? And then getting present to what feelings come up, right? So are you craving things? Do you, want to eat vegetables? Do you like to eat vegetables? Do you like to eat fruits? Do you prefer fruits over vegetables? Why is that? Most of the time it's because the fruits are actually sweet. What fruits and vegetables do you gravitate towards? What fruits and vegetables do you not gravitate towards? So I'm not an Ayurvedic practitioner, but we do have to learn Ayurveda. I learned it in my undergrad, at least on a basic level, because some people go on to become Ayurvedic practitioners. And so one of the things with your doshas, right? Some doshas eat certain ways, right? It's interesting because I don't necessarily like hard foods. I don't like foods that are like in the ground. So like carrots and things like that, they're not my favorite. I will eat them, or beets or things like that. I will eat them, but I'm not drawn to them. Whereas my husband loves ground food and he eats all the things that grows in the ground. Well, my body is made more for power and strength. He's like a little, like a little twig. I mean, he's super strong, but his body is made more for endurance. And so we have two different body types, and our bodies are really geared towards two different food styles and two different eating styles. He loves to carb load. I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to eat a protein, please. So how your body responds and how you really begin to understand your body and you begin to commune with your body is really going to make a difference too. So really listening to your body. I recommend people to really start journaling and getting conscious and getting present about what foods their body is drawn to, what foods their body avoids. Like for me, I will never eat okra. I don't care how healthy it is and however kale, I love spinach, I love salads, I love all kinds of other green things. I don't have to force myself to eat okra and things like that. All right, any questions so far? All right, everybody seems like they are doing good. All right. All right, so bum 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 bum. All right, so now let me see. Okay, so practical advice for at least selecting your produce. Okay, so there's a few different components when you're choosing your fruits and your vegetables. So when you purchase things at the grocery store, okay, it has been cultivated very, like it's been passed to several different people, right? So naturally growing your own fruits and vegetables is going to be the safest and the healthiest, right? So there's all kinds of different options to be able to do that. If you have like a little garden out back, obviously if you have seasons, that makes it a little bit challenging because there's a growing season and a not growing season. So you have to cultivate that. There are also hydroponic setups. I know when I was back in the States with seasons, I had a hydroponic in my home. So it was actually inside, it was in my dining room. And it just stood up and grew and all that stuff. It was Gardein. It's actually really cool if you guys want to learn more about it. And so I was able to pretty much grow most of my lettuces and most of my peppers and things like that. And so I was able to cultivate what nutrients that I wanted in that particular food, meaning what vitamins and minerals, because a lot of the vitamins and minerals, unfortunately, are stripped out of our food supply. There was also obviously no herbicides and pesticides, and I bought the seeds organic. So the seeds were organic, they weren't sprayed, they weren't GMOs, and then I grew them myself, and I was responsible for all the mineralization and the pH balances, etc. Super easy. I am not a growing expert. That is more of my husband's department. And so I was able to do it and actually keep things alive and grow and flourish. So just FYI on that. Now, let's say you're like, there is no way, I'm not interested, I could care less. Then the next line of defense is going to be your farmer's market. So there are a lot more farmers markets where you have farmers that come, they gather at the farmer's market, and you can go up and talk to them. Now you can have conversations with them about, do they spray? Do they not spray? Or is it low spray? And the farmers will be very honest with you in terms of what they do and how they do it and how they cultivate it. And you can start to build relationships with farmers. They have something called community supported agriculture, which is where you can buy into whatever the season crop is. And then you pick up like a weekly share. So it's like a farm share. So similar to like, let's say a goat share or a cow share, where you kind of purchase part of the animal, I guess, and then, get some of the milk from it, because I think getting raw milk is very controversial. And so that's kind of one of the ways that people get around it, is they do like shares. Okay, so with a share, then you have a bundle and you can pick that up. They also have services that online that will can ship different fruits and your vegetables to you. I know there's one, it's like their kind of their structure is like all the fruits and vegetables that are not pretty, that wouldn't go to the grocery store, they will ship you those. And I can't remember the name of that particular source, but if you Google, fruits and vegetable delivery, they can definitely show you some stuff. In Virginia, they have Neighborhood Harvest, which is a hydroponic facility, and they will deliver to your home as well. So there's that piece of it. So really trying to get as close to the source as possible so that you're able to bypass that. Now, if you have to, let's say, grocery shop, it's important to try to grocery shop based off the seasons. Why do you do that? Because they're going to more than likely locally source the fruits and the vegetables rather than outsourcing to other countries, right? So here's the other piece, is that different countries, so there a lot of fruits and vegetables are imported from different countries, and different countries have different standards, so different bacterias and different manure standards and different growing standards entirely. And so sometimes your gut microbiology may not be necessarily geared towards the microbiology of that particular region of the world and the growing of the world. So wanting to make sure that there's a symbiotic relationship. So you want to try to purchase as local as you can, just because your body is more in alignment with that ecology within the system. It will show you, if you look on the grocery store, it will show you where they have gotten that particular fruit and vegetable, whether it's Chile or Mexico or wherever. You want to just try to find the closest to you if possible. And that's why we want to eat towards the seasons, because the seasons is more in alignment with how the body actually is responding, because the body is in that environment. So Dr. Elson Haas, he was a doctor, I think he's passed now. He wrote a book in regards to that, eating based off of the seasons, and also eating based off of where you're living, because your body's kind of more adapted to that particular ecology. So then lastly, naturally, then you just purchase from the grocery store. You want to try to choose organic whenever possible. Naturally, sometimes it's not possible. And then USDA organic, there are certain standards of USDA. Now, some farmers may practice organic, but may not be certified USDA organic. Just also note too, with organic, they still can spray once they pick the food. So they will, it'll be grown organic, but then they pick it and then they can spray it coming to the grocery store to keep it preserved. So just so you're aware, here in St. Lucia, it's pretty wild. Like food goes bad quick, like really quick, like within a day or so, like you can't really mess around with it. So it's definitely a difference between the states. Now, let's say, you can't purchase organic, that's fine. They do have what we call 0-point frequency plates that you can purchase that will actually cancel out and neutralize herbicides and pesticides. And so you can look online for that. It's 0-point frequency, I think.com. And they have these green plates where you can put the food on and it will cancel out the herbicides and pesticides. They do these amazing demonstrations where they'll have like a lemon and you'll bite the lemon and then they'll put it on the plate and then you bite it again and you can tell, the difference. So that will help kind of reduce that exposure. And naturally, you want to make sure that you cleanse your fruits and your vegetables. You can use 11.5 pH water. You can use a little bit of apple cider vinegar, or they have some commercial cleansers as well. But you definitely want to cleanse your food. Now, sometimes people will take the skin off. And so just depending on what the fruit and vegetable is, some fruits and vegetables, such as like your apples, your cucumbers, a lot of the nutrients in the skin. So you don't necessarily want to take that out. Whereas like if let's say it's a peel or something like that, you're going to be, in better shape. EWG, Environmental Working Group, they are a third-party independent research lab. Every year they put out the Dirty Dozens list, and the Dirty Dozens list is the list that of fruits and vegetables you absolutely want to get organic, and that's because of the high propensity towards holding on to the herbicides, pesticides. Strawberries, as a for instance, is one of those, because the skin is so tender. When they're sprayed, they really absorb a lot of the herbicides and pesticides. So you want to really be mindful of that. Okay. When you're looking at your color spreads, obviously your reds, have, like I was telling you, the lycopene, they're helpful for the blood, they're helpful for the heart. And then your green, really helpful for the blood, moving the blood within the system. Your yellows can provide a lot of energy and phytonutrients as well, and some flavonoids, which are also antioxidants within the system. So definitely adding a lot of color to your plate, just intuitively, can really help. I tend to focus on the greens because they keep blood glucose balance, and then I'll go secondary to the reds, and then a third to the yellows. I don't do a lot of purples, but that's just my personal preference, because again, the eggplants and things like that are not really my jam, but there are definitely lots of nutrient value and phytonutrients within that. Okay. So you just want to diversify your choices. I would say to, maybe try a different vegetable once a week, and maybe encourage your children to try a new vegetable every single week. And then that way you're really incorporating. Now, it's okay to use dips, and it's okay to use, different things to make it taste good in the beginning, and then slowly adapt your palate from there. It's common that your palate is not going to be adapted to eating some of the fruits and the vegetables, mostly the veggies, because a lot of them are bitter. And so, you may have to adapt. And so that's why we tend to start off with more of your sweet fruits and vegetables, like your carrots or your berries or things like that, that are going to, be more appealing taste wise, and then slowly move it down. Juicing, as a for instance, right? So you juice with carrots and things like that in the beginning, and then you slowly kind of work your way up into juicing, let's say kale or spinach or something like that, or wheatgrass or some, dark, heavy green that's going to have a bitter. And that's just an easy way to kind of transition. And it's important that if you find a fruit and vegetable that you don't like, not to force yourself, right? So you can try it maybe once, try it a couple times, just to see and try it in different ways. So maybe try it raw, then maybe try it with a dip, or try it with a sauce. But don't force yourself to do it. I know that's, again, counterintuitive, but the reason for that is because your body is telling you no, and you want to respect and honor your body. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't develop and cultivate your palate or get to whatever mental and emotional block is behind it. You would be shocked at how many mental and emotional blocks are in place. And as we remove those mental and those emotional blocks, eating healthy becomes easier, because you want to nourish your body, you want to love your body, you want to support your body. It becomes just, second nature. Okay, so any questions so far? All right, pretty simple, easy. Okay. So how we incorporate more fruits and vegetables into our diets. So common ways to do that would be things like stir fries, right? Where you're mixing up a collection of fruits and vegetables. Excuse me, not fruits, sorry. You're have a collection of veggies in one. You can do that on, let's say, a bed of quinoa or a bed of rice with a protein on top. And that's a really easy, it takes 2 seconds. put a little bit of oil in a pan, dice up some veggies. So like your peppers, kale, onions, that sort of thing, and dice that all up. And with a little bit of wheat-free tamari and or Bragg's coconut aminos. So we use the coconut aminos instead of the liquid aminos because it's lower sodium. It's kind of a natural form of soy sauce, if you will. And then the wheat-free tamari is similar to that, but it doesn't have any wheat in it. So those are kind of just really easy, simple ways to make it taste good and doesn't take a lot of time. Usually when I make recommendations for different foods, I make sure that that it's easy and doesn't taste good. Another place to put your fruits and vegetables in would be soups. So boiling down and making vegetable stock and having that actually infused in the soup broth, because you're getting all of those nutrients, but it's actually in the broth. So you're not actually having to eat those particular fruits, or excuse me, why do I keep saying fruit? Those particular vegetables. It's just kind of coming, naturally in the soup and in the soup broth. You can also do a protein-based broth, like a bone broth, in addition to the veggie broth, and then you can combine them both. And now you really have kind of a power punch, but you'd have to drink the soup, not just eat whatever is in there in the soup. So that's another way. Smoothies are an excellent way to incorporate more of your veggies and your fruits, but be mindful about what fruits that you combine it with, because you don't want a lot of fruits that are going to spike your blood glucose. You can also just have fruit smoothies. I would choose more berries. I would stay out of your pineapples and things like that, because the tropical fruits do spike blood glucose. So you want to be mindful of that. And so your berries are going to be a little bit more balanced, and you can throw protein powder in there to really balance. I know that definitely hits against our rule of protein with our fruits, but with the berries, that is a little bit more stable in terms of our glucose. You can do a little bit of banana, but I would do half of a banana, again, because of the glucose spikes. And if you have any mold or yeast or bacterial overgrowths, you definitely want to avoid those all in entirety, because those are, meaning the bananas and things like that, because those are just going to grow mold. The berries are fine. Most people will not react to berries. You can do green smoothies as well, where you use the berries as a base and throw in, let's say, some spinach or some kale, and then some protein powder as well. And that can begin to incorporate those greeneries that are a little bit more bitter into your palate. So being mindful of that. And then juices, we talked about those, maybe starting off with like your carrot juice or your beet juice. Those are going to be more sweet when you juice them. Ironically, while I don't like to eat those foods, juicing them, I do actually enjoy. And then when you're doing your fruit juices, making sure that you have no more than 4 ounces of beet juice. And that's just because it can overwork the liver. And then carrots and apple, when you're doing your juices in the beginning, are always going to cut any kind of bitter taste. So you do probably 75%, combination. You could do maybe 25 of your apple, 50 of your carrot, and then the other 25 you can do of your greenery, and then slowly move it down where you're doing less apple, less carrot. Really, it's the carrot that really adds a lot of the sweetness to it. And so that's another way to slowly transition your palate into, more of, a healthier palate, getting you out of that high sugar, high fat. I'm not a big proponent of fad diets, meaning like juice fasts that are uncontrolled. You really have to work up to a juice fast. So I don't really recommend people just doing juices in the beginning. I would do more of, I'm going to incorporate 1 juice a day. Maybe that's my breakfast or my snack or something. But I'm not going to just do that, right? Like, let's say I'm eating, pizza, pasta every day or whatever. And now I want to kind of get healthy. So now I'm going to do this whole opposite juice fasting. You will shock the body, and that doesn't work long term. So I wouldn't really recommend that type of treatment or that type of methodology, just because the body doesn't respond well to it. in kind. I would use it more incorporated in, because remember, we're building this as a lifestyle. This is not necessarily something that, a fad that we're going to do quickly and then crash out later. So those are some pretty basic, ways to incorporate. I will also, when I send you out the replay, I'll send some recipes as well that you can take a look at too. Okay. Last part, as we'll talk before we recap, is really being mindful again with our eating. So that's really getting present to not only what you're eating, but why you're eating it. Because I think there is a lot of, you know, there's a lot of disconnect into why we're eating what we're eating, meaning that we're not eating for our health. We're not eating for our, body and building our body. We're eating more for our, taste or our feeling or that kind of thing. I think it's really important to really be conscious and present to our eating. Yes, yeah, definitely. And I do prefer Dr. Steele. Thank you. And so, yeah, tracking your food is a must. I know people don't like to track their food simply because, it is another task to have to complete. However, if we do track our food, right, now we take it out of the ethers, we take it out of this like, oh, I think I'm doing it, and now we know that we're doing it. And so it builds presence and it builds awareness to really understand what it is that we're doing with our nutrition, because otherwise, how are we going to know? We're not going to know. So we don't, just like we don't guess, we test. We don't just kind of go off of our intuition. That's why we use the data to be able to ensure that, we're eating balanced. So making sure that we are balancing, like even with sodium, right? People are shocked at how much sodium they're consuming. They're like, well, I don't add salt to anything, but salt is in a lot of things. And so if you have, let's say, hypertension or something like that, you have to track your sodium, because you want to be 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams. And how are you going to know that? You're going to know that if you track it. So especially if you have a condition or you want to prevent something, you really want to make sure that you are tracking your food so that you have the data before you even get on a supplement. So we always look at food first. We get food balanced to 80% healthy, and then from there we begin to supplement whatever's lacking, right? So I'm glad that you track and that you've learned so much about it. Yeah, definitely juicing and food pairing are also two components that are often not looked at. So, even we didn't talk about grains because that's not really a part of a fruit and vegetable conversation, but grains can also slow down digestion with just about anything that you put in. And it can also spike a lot of blood sugars too. So really the cleanest and the healthiest, especially if, like, let's say you want to lose weight or something like that, is just protein and veggie. That is like the best, quote unquote food cleanse that you can do. It's nice and healthy. It's safe. It's balanced. It's easy. So you do, your protein and you do your veggie, and then maybe you'll do like a juice, throughout the day, a couple protein shakes, and you're good to go. Simple is always better. Like, I'm a big proponent of making things simple, not making things difficult, not overcomplicating things, because the more overcomplicated it is, the more challenging it is, the less that somebody is going to want to do it. So definitely, I think that looking at our food pairing is important. Looking at where we source our foods, making sure the quality of our foods are, and overall, just really being more gentle with ourselves. We're not going to, Rome was not built in a day. So we don't have to go from 0 to 60. We don't have, and I think that gives people a little bit of hope and a little bit of balance where, they don't feel like, oh gosh, now I have to figure everything out and do everything quickly. So, so there's that. All right. Let's see. Does anybody have Any questions before we wrap? Sorry, guys, my computer actually just totally dropped and said we're done. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, it does happen. Technology is so funny. Yes. Okay, cool. So, does anybody have any questions before we conclude about your food, about fruits and vegetables, about sourcing them, about incorporating them, anything in particular about like, what you need to know about all that kind of stuff? All right. Well, if there's no questions, yeah, the right carbs is important. I think we get stuck in the low carb, no carb phenomenon, and it's all diet culture. They're talking about simple carbohydrates, not complex carbohydrates. So people get scared of eating carbohydrates and not even really knowing that they are carbohydrates in general. So there's that piece of it too. So yeah, I think yeah, and I just think the fad, it's so sad. I think the fad diet culture is so prevalent. And everybody is trying to look for the quick fix and they're trying to look for the extremes, and it really just doesn't work. Like, it's really about eating a balanced diet. It's really about eating a whole diet. And again, 80% healthy, 20% whatever. Like, you can really kind of work on balancing things out from there. The last thing that I'll say is, so this month I'm doing, and I'll email this out to you guys, a promo. We have a SpectraCell. I do a SpectraCell micronutrient panel that looks at your fruit, Lord, your fruit, looks at your vitamin and mineral spread. And so it helps to determine where you're deficient, like in hemoglobin A1C, for instance, looks at your kind of 3-month average of your blood glucose. This particular white blood cell, it tests the white blood cells and it looks at your 3-month average of like how much vitamins are you retaining and how much minerals you're retaining. So we do have a promo for that. It is coupled with a med pack, which is a supplement, customized supplement pack. And then also we structure your nutrition for you. It's that particular program is normally $1,500, but it's on sale this month for $9.99. And it's a 3-month. It includes all of your nutrition, and it includes your supplement pack, and it includes your lab test as well. So if you're interested in that. And then also too, we have another course. It's called 30 Days to Healthy Eating. I think it's like $99, and it teaches you, it reinforces nutrition, what's a carb, what's a protein, what's a fat, has tons of recipes in it too. It has, lean meat based protein recipes, pescatarian based proteins, and then also kind of just all veg, but they're all balanced. So they're all balanced macros for you. So you don't have to think about all of that kind of stuff as you're learning to balance your macros and you're learning all of that stuff. So I'll send that out to you, shoot it to you via email with the replay and all the things. And if there's nothing else, yeah, it really is. Food, yeah, I'm so glad you said that, Joanne. Yeah, food is our medicine and it fuels our body. And I, like yourself, it seems like you are really educating yourself about it and learning. And that's really what it takes. Like, you want to keep educating and keep learning and keep evolving and keep growing so that you learn more and more and more how to take care of yourself and be empowered, because ultimately there's no doctor that's going to save you. There's no government that's going to save you. Like, you have to be very proactive these days with your health and to make sure that you're doing what you need to do for yourself. So yeah, I acknowledge you for that. Good job. All right, groovy. Is there anything else before we sign off? Yay! I know, I love it. Yes, exactly. Early detection is amazing. Yes, you are right on track, girlfriend. I love it. All right, cool. Well, I will send you guys this replay. And again, sorry for the little technical. I thought I had more life on my laptop than I did. I guess not. And so thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon at another class. Take care.